Hi there and welcome to this Q&A video. So as you might have noticed through the title or what I just said, this is not an electronics project video, as you can see. The reason is that I'm currently very busy with finishing my Master of Science thesis. So I didn't have the time to work on projects or doing anything big this week, but I saw that many people enjoyed the last Q&A video, which was completely unscripted and random. You might have already noticed the unscripted parts. So once again, I'm not a native English speaker. There will be a lot of thinking on my side what I want to say. But I got my phone and I asked you on Facebook and Twitter and Patreon what are questions for my channel, what will happen in the year 2018 and how everything will go on with my content creations. So without wasting any more time, let's see what you ask and I will answer completely spontaneously and maybe, hopefully, it will not be too boring. Let's get started. We got 19 comments on Patreon. So let's just start from the top. Okay, were that all? Yes, I think so. Okay, let's start from the top. First off, we got Noor Gek, who asks, what's your project's process like? How much time goes into planning, parts ordering, assembly, software, documenting? So the time budget for every video, because it's a weekly production, it's around 30 hours a minimum to around 60 hours a maximum. So if I would have to divide that time into what you just asked, I would say planning, that takes around, let's take a practical example. Wait, where is it? Where is it? Here it is. So this is a project I have released not too long ago. It's the crude cocktail making machine. It worked pretty well and we will use that as an example to see how much time I've spent on not only making the project but also the video which goes along with it. So let's go through the list. Planning. So I started planning the crude cocktail maker before it went online as a video, I think 4 or 5 weeks before it aired, before it went live. So what went into the planning, I had to figure out the shape, what kind of motors I wanted to use, how I wanted the electronics to be in the end, what kind of software, how it should interact with one another, with the sensor. And it took a while. I would say the planning was like 5 hours, maybe, I would say. Because with the planning, you also have to make the schematic. I did the schematic before I even wired anything inside the cocktail maker. Then you have to make plans, mechanical plans, for what kind of dimensions it should have according to how tall is the glass and how big are the motors and all of that. It's, yeah, I would say 5 hours. 5 hours is realistic if you're fast. If you're slow, it may take 10 hours or something like this. But 5 hours. Let's go with 5 hours. So after I planned this thing and ordered all the parts, which mostly came from China, so I had to wait another 1 or 2 weeks until 1 week. No, that's too optimistic, like 2 to 4 weeks until the parts arrived. And then I could start, okay, parts ordering was the next part of the question. So that's I would do that together with the planning. Planning and parts ordering is like 5 hours. Then the assembly. So the assembly, I would say that's the whole project which shows up in the video in the end. So that takes a lot of time because you do not only have to make the shape, you have to cut the woods, you have to glue it together, you have to connect the electrical components, solder it, all the things that are involved with it, but you have to film it as well. And filming is quite difficult because sometimes you don't like the angle, you have to reshoot things, you have to get it all set up very nicely, and I always try to do it with care so that the end product of what I film looks decent and people like it, and people seem to like it, so that's going pretty good. And I would say like the whole assembly takes, it's hard to tell. I actually I can only estimate like maybe 20 hours, everything together with the assembly and the filming together, like maybe 20 hours. I don't track the time, so I'm not pretty sure. The software part is the next part of the question, the software for the Arduino, obviously. And I did that, I think, during the evening. It took 3 hours, 2 hours, because not because it was that difficult, but I had to find out like how it works the best. So I did a small prototype of the Arduino code in like half an hour, and then I tested it out on the cocktail maker, tweaked a couple of things, looked how it worked best, and then it came out, then the final Arduino code came out the way it is now, and I think all of that it took 3 hours. Okay, next part of the question, documenting. Yeah, documenting, I would say that goes along with the planning, like the schematics and the mechanical drawings I did and published. So I think that goes into those 5 hours. So the project process, so far 5 hours, 20 hours, yeah, so that's 30 hours just completing the project, but then you got another parts where you have to edit the video, but that's not part of the question. So for the project process, if you do not want to do the filming, I would say you could finish this whole thing from idea to end product in like 20 hours. 20 hours is realistic without filming, without all that stuff. I think 20 hours you can do this, and I hope that answered your question and I didn't just answer something you didn't want to know. Maybe I went into too much detail. But yeah, that was the first question. Next question from Pierre Vernecht. Hi, I'd love to see you make a video about how you use EasyEDA. From the idea to the finished project, schematic, PCB, layout, component selection, buying. Is that a subject you will assert one day? So I did a video about EasyEDA, I think in 2016. You can check it out there. I showed how it works in general, like with the component selection, how you make the schematics, how you can turn them into PCBs. And I think they also have a simulation part in the software. So I showed all of that, but I think what you're after is what I did with my battery protection circuit. There I tried something like this, like I had an idea for this LiPo battery protection charge. What else did it do? Discharge protection circuit, like all that stuff. And there I went from the idea to how you do the schematic to how you turn it into a PCB. Of course, for the video I shrank that content down quite a bit. So I think it was an 11-minute video, and it was only just the general idea of, yeah, you can select those components, you put them in the schematic, and you turn it into a PCB. But I didn't went into full detail, like I connected it like this because I thought of that, and something like that. So I think you're here for the more detailed video about such a subject. And I'm not sure if I want to do it. First off, I'm not an expert. I'm not a PCB design expert. I didn't learn that specifically. It's just like a hobby. So maybe I'm not the person you want to hear it from, because it might be wrong, but in the end my project worked, so that's a good thing to begin with. Um, I put it on my to-do list. I don't know if I ever get to it because it would be a very long video and I always try to keep it short and interesting. But maybe, maybe. I put it on the to-do list. Next question from Thorsten Ruger. I would like to drive a large 3-amp solenoid with precision, possibly a joystick input. Such a driver would be valuable to me. I could directly pay for it. Is that a model for you? So I get that question often. Can you build something for me if I pay you? And that's a model that would work for many engineers, I think. That's how the world works. You know, you give people money and they do their job. But for me, the problem is that I'm a video maker, a video creator, and I put pretty much all my time into making new videos because that's what I want to do, and I don't want to spend all my time then doing a project for a certain someone and that will not be a video. No, I'm doing YouTube because I want to do YouTube, not because I want to gain attention from people who then give me engineering jobs or electronics jobs or something like this. So I want to continue spending my time making videos and I will not do paid work or something like this. There are plenty of other engineers out there who can do something like that and I think you should go ask them. Okay, next question from Thomas St. Dennis. Do you think out there somewhere is a clone of you with an evil spoke goatee who purposely lets the smoke out of poor eBay electronics? I doubt it. Next question from Vilkanaupa Huarok Yuyo Caesar. And I say it now, I'm very sorry if I misspell some words, some names, but it happens. Don't take it as an insult, please. Okay, the question is, okay, that's not gonna work. I can't speak, I think it's Spanish. Yeah, sorry about that, I don't speak Spanish. And he got another question right under it, which is also in Spanish. Sorry, please next time English. Woli asks, regarding the HDD rotary encoder, a normal encoder will recognize single steps regardless or nearly regardless of the speed of the rotation. Does your repurposed solution work as well, or do you need to crank up the spin to get readings? So I had two solutions in the video. The first one was with the ADC of the Arduino and the second one was with a comparator setup who is then fed into the Arduino. So the first option with the ADC, it does depend on the rotation speed because you set a threshold value in the code and it looks for that value, and of course if you spin it too slow you will never reach that value. So yeah, there it is important. And also with the second option, it is still important, but not as much. Because with the comparator, you really have that fine adjustment where just when you turn it a little bit, the voltage from the phase is higher than the star voltage and the comparator already outputs a high voltage and the Arduino can recognize that. So there the rotation speed can be slower, but once again there is a limit. Like if you turn it very, very slowly, it will not work. So yes, that is a problem that does not occur with traditional rotary encoders, but I still think the HDD rotary encoder is fun to play around with and there are certainly some applications for it. But yeah, what you asked in the question is true. It does depend on the speed of rotation. Moving on to the next question. Zachary Bjolmlin. Do you have other hobbies as the electronic, or do you spend all of your time for the electronic? No, I do not spend all my time with electronics, even though I think it is a great hobby and I can recommend it to anyone. But aside from electronics, when I'm not working with it, I also do like to do sports. I did football for 8 years, I think. Like, if you're American, it's called soccer in your country, but here in Germany, it's football. Then I did judo. I don't even know if judo is the English word for it as well, but I did that for 2 years afterwards. And ever since I graduated, it was hard to do a sport which involves some kind of team. That is why I went to the gym since I was 18. And I go to the gym twice a week, doing some sports. So yeah, I would count that as a hobby. And other hobbies, I like to play games. Board games are fine, but more console games. I got a PS4, I got a Nintendo Switch that I like to play. Recently, not too much because I'm kind of stressed out with the Master of Science thesis, which I'm working on. But when I got time, I like to play a bit. And what else? Movies. Movies are also fun to watch, yeah. So movies, games, and sports. That sums it up, I think. Okay. Next question from someone whose name I will not try to pronounce. And he asks, will you work with FPGA? Yes, I will in the future. I can promise that. I haven't worked with FPGAs in recent times, but I looked into them a couple of years ago, but then I went more into the microcontroller route, and I still have an FPGA laying around in my shelf there, and it's just waiting for me to pick it up and do something with it. And maybe one day I will do like a beginner's guide tutorial, not only for me, but for the viewers as well. So just showing the basic things you can do with an FPGA, why it is sometimes useful to use FPGAs and not microcontrollers. So yes, I will work with them in the future. When exactly, I don't know. I've got lots of other projects, tutorials I want to do beforehand, but someday, sometimes it will happen. Next question from Sean Lewis, who asks, do you ever post videos of the projects that don't work out at all / abandoned? So recently I started this DIY or buy series in which I judge whether you should obviously buy a product or whether you should DIY a circuit for it, which can do the same. And that project was actually a failure to begin with, because I worked like 3 or 4 days on the driver for the piezoelectric transducer, and it didn't work out at all. And the problem was that I have 1 week of time to make the video, and of course if I spend 3 to 4 days trying to figure out the driver for a circuit, I cannot start all over again with a new project. And that's when I decided to turn this failed project into a new series in which I said, okay, should you really go through the trouble of making such a DIY circuit, or should you just buy the product instead? And I think that was a failed project that I did publish. But overall, I do not publish failed projects. I think in the last Unscripted Q&A video, I even said that I usually don't have failed projects because I know beforehand if they will work out, and if not, I don't try them. But since then, I made the mistake to actually begin a project which didn't work out until now, because there's just a big problem which I cannot solve at the moment. I don't have enough time to put into the project to solve it, so it's currently on standby, and I will not post what I've been doing with the project so far. And even if it doesn't work out, I will not post the project up until this point where the problem occurred. So all in all, if there is a failed project, I will usually not post about it or publish anything about it. It's failed. Okay, I have to say there are a lot of Patreon questions this time. I think last time there were only like 6 or 9 questions. Now we got 19. I think the Patreon questions will eat up a lot of time. But anyway, next question from Humphrey Chiramba, who asks, do you have any tips for students currently doing electrical engineering? Tips? The problem is there are no good tips for electrical engineering. You just have to do it. You have to learn a lot. You have to go through a lot of problems, a lot of trouble. But I say in the end, it is worth it. So that's my tip in the end. Just keep pushing forward. Next question from Jonathan Smith. What's been your favorite project / hack so far? And if time and budget weren't an issue, what would you like to try? I think I got a similar question last time. I think my favorite project so far, what's it called? The Game Boy emulator. One of my favorite projects so far is the Game Boy Raspberry Pi emulator. I think I said it in the last video as well. It turned out much better than I expected and still works to this day, and it's fun to play. Yeah, so that was my favorite project. And the other part of the question was, if time and budget were an issue, what would you like to try? I've always been a fan of electric vehicles. So if time and budget really isn't a problem, I think I would like to work on something like an electric car. Yes, I think that would be a dream project for me, but then again, time and budget is always an issue. So let's move on to the next question. Electro Noobs asks, which tool / machine you really want to have now, but you can't afford it yet, or you think it's not the moment to buy it? Very good question. The machine / tool which I would like to have right now, but I bet it's too expensive. I didn't check on it, but I think it's very expensive. But another problem for me is I don't have that much space here in my workroom. The machine I'm talking about is a laser cutter. And I think I will not get one soon, but it would be an awesome machine just for cutting wood or other materials. I think it's easier to handle than a CNC, and I think it gets better cuts as well. So yeah, a laser cutter, definitely, if I would have the money and the space. But let's move on. Brett S asks, I really enjoyed the last one you did. Thank you very much. How much paper do you get through on a video? You seem to do a lot of diagrams during explanations. Do you keep your papers or do you recycle them afterwards? So it depends on the project or video I do. Like if I don't want to explain something on paper, I obviously don't waste paper. But in average, it's like when I have, let's say I have to do 5 diagrams where I want to explain something or schematics or something similar, I would say 10 to 20 sheets of paper I have to use. Because it doesn't always work on the first take. I have to try several times to get the right angle and then record it the way I want it to. So it takes quite a lot of paper. And I do not keep the paper. Once a project, a video is finished, I recycle it all. Okay, Pred S seems to have asked more than one question. The next one is, what's your favorite Indian food and why isn't it dal? First off, I have no idea what dal is, sorry. And favorite Indian food, I don't eat that much Indian food, I would say, but I think chicken curry, something like that, if that counts as Indian food, I think that's pretty good. And that's pretty much the only Indian food I tried. Sorry. And next question from Pred S. When ordering parts, do you order the whole project's worth or do you have many components laying around just waiting for a project? It depends. Like with the cocktail machine, I had to order the motors That's definitely a project where I had to order a couple of things, but usually, like maybe every 2 months, I go to my favorite eBay store, GC Supermarket. I talked about it in a previous Q&A video. I can put a link to it in the video description if you want to visit it. And they always have a couple of new things, and they are a very good shop. They have a big variety of things, and there I also often just buy a couple of things to sit around on the shelf, because you never know what you will need for a project, and when you got it laying around, it's pretty nice to have, because you can start the project right away. So I would say sometimes I have to order for a specific project, and sometimes I have the parts laying around. Next question, and the last one from Brett S. Do you think it's worth it for people to salvage parts from consumer electronic devices, or is it just simpler to buy cheaply from China? Good question. That also depends. Like, if you have a broken device and you would throw it away, of course it makes sense to open it and just see what awesome components are inside and salvage a couple of them. For example, coils. Coils are always worth salvaging. So that's definitely worth it. But then again, if you need small capacitors, small resistors, they don't cost much, not only from China, but from your local seller as well. It's not really worth desoldering every small resistor, capacitor. So it's really worth it to just order a big package from China with those components. Okay, almost done with the Patreon questions. The next one is from Junio Eduardo de Moraes Aquino. In your opinion, which are the most important tools for an electronic hobbyist lab? So let's start really just the basics, what you will need if you want to do electronic projects. So the first thing, I think I did that in the last Q&A video, but anyway, a multimeter is something you will always need. Maybe not the MetroHit Pro, it's expensive as hell, but something like the Unity I used before, or I did a multimeter basics video. I think it was my first basics video. There I also put a decent multimeter for like $30–40 into the video description. So you can check that out. That is also a very good option. The next thing you will definitely need is a power supply, a lab bench power supply. Let me just grab, oh, it's heavier than I thought. Can you see it? Yeah, you can see it. So I've been using this ELV DPS 5315 lab bench power supply, but really you can get cheap ones for like $80–100, which are pretty decent. But that is something you will definitely need for any electronics project. So there's only one very important tool left, which is the soldering iron. Definitely need those for perf board soldering, component soldering, all that good stuff. So definitely get one. And cheap ones also works if you're a beginner. You just want to try out this new hobby. You can get cheap ones as well, which just heat up with no control, but they work for soldering as well. And those are the important electrical components, I would say, like lab bench power supply, multimeter, soldering iron. But in addition to that, you will also need needle nose pliers. Very useful when bending components, bending pins, holding something in place. It's like a heat resistance extension of your hand. So that's very useful. And the other thing is a nice pair of cutters. Like I have one here from Knipex. Works really well. I have been using them for 5 years now. And yeah, that's for cutting components or something similar. So that's pretty much all you need for a beginner, like the complete basics. Pliers, cutters, multimeter, soldering iron, lab bench power supply. That's it. Then you can start your first project, and then you can see what else you need, and then expand your equipment as you go with more difficult projects. And maybe you don't like doing electronics projects at all and you stop, but then at least you didn't spend a fortune on equipment. The next and last Patreon question is from George, who asked, can you make a water fountain speaker? So if you don't know, a water fountain speaker is basically a speaker, and on top you got a acrylic glass construction like a cube, and inside there's water and I think a couple of pumps, and there's actually a water fountain forming inside this acrylic cube according to the volume of the music. And you can buy those. I think they are not expensive, like $20 or something like that. They're also from China. Now, I think it is an interesting idea, but for my channel, I think I would not go with the speaker part, because I think I did like 2 or 3 speaker projects in the past, and I don't think there have to be more speaker projects. But the fountain effects, according to the volume, it's interesting. So I put it on my to-do list. Maybe it will happen. I think so. Okay, that was Patreon. So now let's move on to Facebook and Twitter. And since there were so many Patreon questions, I think I will do 5 Facebook questions and 5 Twitter questions. And that should be it for this video. So let's start with Facebook. We got 201 comments. It's ridiculous. Yeah, but let's just take the top 5 ones. I think they are the ones with the most likes. So I think people are most interested in those. Yeah, let's start with Torben Riebke, who asked, a video about ground loops and galvanic isolation and capacitors for EMC, EMV in German, would be nice. Perhaps also filters, audio. Ground loops, that's a problem I had in my earlier videos when I did the Bluetooth music system, which I put into the bathroom ceiling. And there was the problem that I had the same ground potential for the amplifier stage and the Bluetooth receiver. And the Bluetooth receiver did then create distortions for the audio signal, and you hear that over the speaker. And it was very annoying. It was a problem I did not get rid of during that time. I then went the easy route and used another power supply for the Bluetooth receiver so that they don't share the same ground potential. But, and there comes the question from, he said, galvanic isolation, that's a way to remove this ground loop. I think I talked about galvanic isolation also in my latest relay video, in which I said it's important to have that, since you don't have the same potentials. You can even touch 230 volts, not get shocked, because you are basically galvanically isolated. So maybe a separate video about the subject, how you can get rid of such ground loops and EMV and perhaps also filters, would be quite interesting. So I would say that I put it on my to-do list, and I think there will be a video happening about it. Okay, let's move on to Christian Bravo, who asked, please tell us the process that you do when you make a video. Plan the video, sound editing, etc. It will be inspiring for someone who wants to do video with great quality as you do. First off, thank you for the compliments. Always happy when people say that it's good quality that I produce. The thing is, I think I already talked about how project planning goes with the cocktail maker example beforehand. But so I already talked about the project process with the Patreon question beforehand, where I said like what goes into it, planning, cutting, filming, all that stuff. And what you might want to know right now is what else goes around it for the video. And for the video, there are a few things missing I didn't said before. And those are, like you said, sound, editing, script. I think those are the 3 important things which are missing right now. So for the cocktail machine, I did the script after I was finished creating the machine itself, because in that case, it makes sense to make the machine and then write an interesting script of how I did it. Sometimes I do that the other way around. With basics videos, I do the script first because I want, because it's more like a teaching experience. Like I want to say this, 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 and this, and then I find out later how I will put that in the video with visual means. But here it's first project, then script. Script writing also takes quite a while. It has to be a good script because the script in the end determines how good a video will be in the end. With a bad script, I think a video can be really bad, and with a good script you can even make a bad video decent, I would say. So a script is very important, and it takes 2 to 3 hours for me to write one. When you got the script, then you go into filming. What I usually do when I do not do the project beforehand, I go through the list of what I want to say, and then I do the scenes one after the other to fill out what I want to say in the end. Once you got that done, you got your completed footage, you got your script. What you do then is the voiceover. I forgot all about the voiceover. So that's also very important. It's basically reading out the script loud. That also takes 2 hours to record, and then you have to cut it, because I do one big recording where I read out the entire script, and then I have to edit out the bad parts, put it all together. That also takes 2 hours. And then I have to continue with editing. I said before I use Adobe Premiere Pro, and editing, it's also a pretty simple process, I would say. You put your voiceover in one track, and then first comes the intro, then the little opening sequence with me soldering LEDs, and then comes the rest voiceover, and you pretty much just align the video footage with what you say, and then you get a pretty decent product in the end if you put it well together. But then again, it's not just that. You can get creative with different effects and all that stuff. Yeah, that's the one thing. And in the end, a bit of sound editing, like putting background music. I think I forgot to say how much editing takes, how much time editing takes. So a general rule for me is 1 hour of editing, no, the other way around. 1 minute of editing takes around 1 hour. And yeah, it can add up. So if you do a 10-minute video, you can expect like 8 to 10 hours of editing. And in the end, like I said before, some sound editing, you put some background music down, and then you also adjust the volume levels, so you get the background music really as background music that you do not hear very clearly, but it's there. And then you also adjust the loudness of the voiceover so that it's not overwhelming and goes along with the rest of the audio files. Yeah, in the end you export it, then I do a thumbnail, like the project is usually the focus of the thumbnail, and then you do some writing around, maybe the title. I often do that. Yeah, and then it's done. You upload it and you're done with your video. If I say it like this, it sounds really easy, but there goes a lot into making such project videos. Yes, I hope that answered your question. If not, maybe we can talk in the next Q&A video about the rest, which I did not answer now. Okay. Third question from Florian Zimpfer. Are you going to work with vacuum tubes in the future? These are still very handy for HV cases like Tesla coil or even audio amplification. I think I got it for a very long time on my to-do list. Yeah, you're not the first who asks about this subject, so I will do it. I will try to do it in 2018. I will see how things go. Currently, like I said before, like 3 or 4 times now, it's quite stressful at the moment, like writing the master thesis, but that will be over in March. So March, I will look what I can do, what people asked for, and right now I really have to manage my time to get videos out weekly and see how they go. So I have to play it safe now, but for later in the year, I think I can do this. But no promises, but I will try my best as always. Fourth question from Manuel Tapia. What books do you study, have or learn from based on electronics? And what's the easiest and hardest thing when it comes down to programming and Arduino? Books, not a lot. I don't read that often. What I can recommend is The Arts of Electronics. That's a book I own and I also read through it. It's pretty good. But other than that, you can nowadays learn a lot from the internet. The only thing you have to look out for is in forums. Not everything is always true, so you can, but the internet offers a lot of sources to learn from, so that's the best way to learn, I think. Just watching what others do on the internet and learn from that. But then again, if it's very scientific, there are lots of books from lots of different professors, which you can also look into. I also did that recently and they're also pretty good, but there are no big recommendations from me for those books. Easiest and hardest thing when it comes down to programming in Arduino? The hardest thing is when you work with timers. Like, timers are not that hard to understand, but all those registers, like what is located where, and then always bring up the data sheet, looking through it. So that's the hard thing, like remembering all the registers. And the easiest thing for the Arduino is, I think, the simple functions, like digital write. If you just want to let an LED blink, digital write, don't even care about the registers, just let it blink. For something simple like that, it's super easy to use. So I think that's the easy and hard things when it comes to Arduino programming. Last question from Henry Ray. Have you opened all your electronic lab devices, like your DC power supplies, just for curiosity, and why not? Actually, I think no. Like, usually I like to open all kinds of things and look inside, see how they did it and what makes devices tick in the end. But with my lab devices here, lab bench power supply, oscilloscope, function generator, soldering iron, I did not do that because the problem when I open them is that I always somehow damage something and then they don't work, and I have a problem because I really have to work with those devices for videos. So I try to not open them, not destroy them in any way. Yes, so the answer is no, I have not opened them. So as a bonus question, I'm gonna just choose randomly one question from Facebook. Okay, let's do that. Okay, Antonio Magdik. Can you make a video about home automation systems and maybe try to make a crude one? I have to stop here because I got pretty much the same question in the last Q&A video. So watch that, and for now, let's search for another random question. I choose you. Moratama asks, can you please make a video explaining how grounding/earth works? I always get shocked really badly when I touch any device with a metallic body. Definitely. I think there are a lot of possibilities when it comes to safety videos from my side, because I didn't do much until now. I did one where I showed what's safe to touch, DC, AC, but I think that didn't show the safety which exists in electrical systems. I can show, for example, here in Germany, it's a pretty good safety system with the breakers and the, I don't know how to say it, FI Schutzschalter. Sorry, I'm not familiar right now with the English word. But yeah, and grounding, also an interesting subject, goes along pretty well with the subject, another one pointed out before, with the galvanic isolation, maybe something like that. Maybe one or two safety videos where I can explain those concepts and how the electrical systems are not as dangerous as many people think. So yep, good idea. It's on my to-do list. So that's it with Facebook. Let's move on to Twitter. Twitter got, wait for it, 47 comments. Once again, not as insane as Facebook, but I will pick out 5 and then we will do one random question once again. I think that should be enough. Okay, again, from the top with the most likes, from Nick. What books, websites and other resources did you find most helpful when you were studying electronics? Books, once again, I don't read that many books. What I found very helpful was just the script from the professors. Worked out pretty well for me, just going through that. And whenever I found problems, like things I didn't understand, I did use the internet. I just Googled it. How do you calculate that? Then I looked through other examples from other people, and then usually my problem went away. And that's how I studied it. Like the professor's script and then just searching online for other solutions. No books, sorry. Next question from Riasten. Can you explain how... Oh, no. Okay, it seems like Twitter doesn't sort according to likes. Okay, so let's just look through it. Who has the most likes? Oh. Okay, here's one from Jeffrey. If you would have gotten access to infinite technology with endless development possibilities, what would you work on? Going back to earlier when somebody asked if time and budget was not a problem, with this question I would also go with electric cars. It's just such an interesting subject for me. If I would have those possibilities, I would definitely go with electric cars. Okay, third question from one with many likes. Next question with 9 likes from Gerardas. How often do you get asked by your friends/family to fix their broken electronics? Not very often. The thing nowadays with commercial electronics is you can't really fix them easily. Like if there's a capacitor blown, okay, you can fix that. But everything else aside from that, it's pretty hard to do. So even if they asked me, it's usually like, okay, I can't find the problem. Sorry about that. So that's the one reason. And the other reason is I don't have time. Like there was a time when I got asked quite often, can you try to fix that and that? But I always said, no, in the beginning I said, okay, I'll have a look at it. But due to the video production every week, there's not much time to work on other things. So I usually end up taking too much time trying to repair them, and then it doesn't work out. So I just say in the beginning, okay, but it'll take a very long time, or I just say, no, sorry, I don't have the time. Not trying to be mean, but there are just other things which are more important at that time. So, next question from Stephen Swanson. I teach electronics to high school students. Is there any advice I can share with those wishing to become electrical engineering majors? Like before, my tip for electrical engineering. Okay, these are students. I would say it's hard. I would be realistic. For example, with my course, we got, I think, 200 students who started the electrical engineering, and in the end I think 60 people got the degree in the end. So there are a lot of people who do not make this. It's quite difficult when it comes to the mathematics and physics sides, and I would say it's realistic. Like, it's awesome, but there are a lot of hurdles which you have to overcome. So that's the tip, I would say. But if you're passionate about it, you can make it happen, definitely. Okay, I think that was the fourth question, I hope. So since there are not many questions left with a lot of likes, I'm just gonna choose an interesting one. Okay, this is an interesting one from Vishal Tekvani, who asked, when will be electric longboard update video coming? Very good question. I showed it in my strain gauge video, I think, that I've been working on it for half a year now, I think. There has been big progress on it. There are a lot of useful features which are now included, which a lot of other hobbyist longboard projects, electric longboard projects, do not have, which are very useful. Not only the strain gauge measuring if a person is standing on the longboard itself, but also acceleration functions, so that when you push the joystick forward, it doesn't go according to the joystick immediately. So there's not that big of an acceleration, but there's like a ramp function which builds that up. That is an important function. Then I got battery safety features in the remote. The remote is completely self-made. It's 3D printed with a design. Then we got a receiver and a transmitter PCB with lots of different functions built into it. I don't want to get into too much detail right now. But the problem is that I did this project not really for the channel. I did it for another purpose. So I didn't film anything. I just did it, I documented it well, but it's not very well made for a video. And I don't know if I will make a video about it, just sitting there like, okay, here is the longboard, look at it. I did that, like that. Like just talking about it, I think that wouldn't be as interesting as having a video showing how I did that and that and that and put all the components together and why I chose those components. I'm not sure. Like maybe I will do such a talking video. Maybe I will not do a video at all, just not talking about it. Or the third option, which takes a lot of time but is my favorite, since I put that much effort into it and I think it would be awesome to share with everyone, is I build the thing once again. Like I order the same parts and do the project again, but this time I film everything. And since I know how things go together because I documented beforehand, it should be pretty easy to do. It will still take a lot of time to put those things together, but I think that is the best option when it comes to the audio-visual appeal of the video. Once again, when I have more time, I will think about it properly. I will judge whether it makes sense. If everyone says, hey, I really want to see that, then I will probably get to it eventually. So maybe, maybe is my answer. Maybe it will happen, maybe not. I wish it will happen. So it will probably happen. Last question from Twitter, a random one. I will pick you. Oh, okay. That's a good one because it got 3 likes and I apparently ignored it beforehand. Sorry. It's from Roberto Bagnato, who asked, are you planning on doing an in-depth tutorial / series on how to create a PCB, design and everything else? So yeah, that's similar to the Patreon question from before about the Easy EDA tutorial. So I can see that people are interested in the subject, but once again, I'm not a PCB design expert or anything like that, but I see that there are a lot of people who would like to see something like that. I put it on my to-do list. I will probably say in the video, I'm not an expert, so that people don't get too mad at me for saying wrong things, but I will see what I can do. Once again, when I got more time, I will judge it a bit more seriously, whether it makes sense or not, but it should be possible. So the answer for this question is, I put it on my to-do list, which means it will happen sooner or later. And with that being said, this Q&A session is over. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it wasn't too boring. And since it was unscripted, that my way of speaking didn't bother you too much. I hope you're looking forward to the productions I will do in 2018. I will give it my best. There are a lot of projects, a lot of videos, a lot of tutorials I still want to do. I hope they're gonna be very interesting, and I hope many of you will enjoy them. I will try to get back on more bigger projects when I got more time on my hand, when all this master thesis is over. And yeah, I hope you're looking forward to it. Until then, stay creative, and I will see you next time.